like I promised, we are going to have some high school physics here. So any of you who actually have learned about wave, if you have heard of following terms, wave, period, not the girly period. You do know that the cycle you have monthly, it could also be called period, not that period of your wave, and frequency, 周期频率. So we're going to talk about that one more time to refresh your memory. So what is a period? 周期一般我们把它定义成一个波完成一个 cycle 所需要的时间。那个 the abbreviation we use for it is capital T. Okay? So right now all you have to do is I'm telling you, so how do you calculate frequency? 1 over T. So you can get your period by using, actually if you want to calculate human frequency, you can use prot. As long as you lay out your waveform, you can actually highlight one cycle and then you get the duration for one period. And the way to calculate frequency is simply by doing 1 over 1 divided by T. Then you get your frequency. Okay? Now, here's a question. Do you think boys have higher frequency or girls have higher frequency? Girls. Okay. So in that sense, which one has a longer period? Which gender? I mean, their sound wave will have a longer period. Yes, because 1 divided by a bigger number would be a lower number. Okay, so you just need to remember 周期频率 and frequency is usually measured in hertz. In Chinese, it's hertz, and the abbreviation is Hz. So for girls, let me tell you, most of your frequency are around 200, 250. Actually, and for boys, it could go low as 100 or 150. Okay, so period and frequency. Now, imagine that if I were to show you 4 waves, and this one, I'm going to tell you the period, the period is 0.01 second, which is 10 millisecond. 0.01 秒等于10毫秒. Okay, this is just pure math. And then the frequency for it should be 1 over the period, which is 100 hertz. Now, the following, 这样清楚吗？如果跟你们说周期是0.01秒的话，你就是1除以0.01，然后你就得到100。So what do you think the frequencies for these 3 waves are? So the period for one wave is actually only half of this number. What's the half of this number? 0.005. It's twice. You can imagine it's faster than this one, 2 times. So it's just you can double it. And then for this one, you want to guess? It's 400. And then for this, it's 800. Okay? So for the purpose of this class, I'm not going to ask you to do very complex calculation, but you need to know your vocal fold is vibrating at this rate. Probably not 800, but anything below 400 is possible. For girls, you can actually go high to a very high frequency. So when we talk about sounds, waves, there are actually 2 types of sound waves you should know, which is the first one. Can you sort of see? It's the periodic wave, the one that I showed you earlier. It's like this. This is what we call pure wave. It has 1 frequency all the way through. But there are some other frequency. I'm sorry, I can't see very well. Can you sort of see it's going? So it's periodic, but it's not as pure as the one that we were seeing. Those are called complex waves. And for pure waves, sometimes they're called sine wave. That's the physics name of it. And usually it only has 1 frequency, like your tuning fork. 我们上礼拜看的那个调音叉有没有? But for complex waves, it's usually composed of multiple pure waves. Let me show you an example. So this is how the wave in your waveform in your production might look like. It is periodic for your vowels, but it's not pure. And actually, if you decompose it, 把它分解了之后, you will find that it's actually, so this is an X-ray. Let's just call it, this is like an X-ray of this wave. This top wave is actually a combination of this yellow, of this, the pink one, the green one, and the blue one. So complex wave can be decomposed into small, simple sine waves. And this in math, they call it, anybody know the name of decomposing a complex wave? 怎么把那个复杂的波分解成，把它算出来，它们是几个单纯的波造成的。So 这个叫傅立叶分析，有没有听过 ？Fourier analysis 就是把一个很复杂的东西 decompose 变成简单的东西。Were you here when I talk about my trip to Thailand? Yeah, so I actually went with a chef who's a professor in the culinary school in 高雄那个餐饮学校，对不对？ He's a chef, so he actually performed sort of food Fourier analysis every time we go to a village. So this is what happened. He would eat a dish. Honestly, we didn't know what's in it, but it was really fun. We were just trying everything. And he would go, I think this has any seed, 八角, and parsley, and a little bit black pepper. And so by tasting a complex dish, you can actually decompose it he can decompose it to different ingredients. And I think for some girls, do you know anybody who can actually look at someone's makeup and say, yeah, I think your eyeshadow has a tint of green. 化妆你也可以做傅立叶分析啊, you know. You can say, okay, the foundation, 粉底 is like what color, and then, so that's the idea of Fourier analysis. And that's the idea of how we want to decompose the complex waveform, just to see exactly what are the ingredient that make this wave possible. So we call the lowest frequency. So this is a periodic complex wave, and we could decompose it using software to decompose it to the several simple waves that we saw, and we call the wave that has the lowest frequency the fundamental frequency of this wave. So fundamental frequency is the term you need to remember. 就是我们把一个复杂的波 decompose 变成简单的波之后，我们就挑最低的那个 frequency， 说 you are the most fundamental one for this group complex wave family. And the abbreviation for fundamental frequency is F0. It's the foundation of everything. So, but you also have heard of the term pitch. And you should be thinking, why do we sometimes call it fundamental frequency, which is the 调, the 音高, the pitch of a voice. And the truth is, just think that fundamental frequency are for nerdy mathematicians. Fundamental frequency is the absolute value. You measure the period and you do your calculation, you get your frequency. 那是算出来的. But pitch has slightly different judgment, human judgment in it. Pitch 是针对人的听力去发展出来的. Pitch is subjective to psychoacoustical attribute of sound. It's not a purely objective physical property. I'll explain more. So, if you're calculating frequency, if a wave has 200 hertz, it's 200 hertz, and the other wave is 100 hertz. It's definitely twice of it, right? And then you can do it's 100 hertz more. If you do the same thing for waves around 3,000 and 3,100, 如果你有两个波，一个是3000，一个是3100, it's also 100 hertz apart, right? But human beings don't treat these two differences equally. Guess which one you will be more sensitive to? The 100 hertz difference between, let's say, 200 and 300 or 3000 and 3100. 你觉得你会对200跟300赫兹之间的差别比较敏感，还是我刚刚说几千，3000跟3100的那个比较敏感？200到300的 ，OK? It's just human. For our hearing, we don't have to hear the frequency of that high level. So we're more sensitive to that. So pitch is a slightly different measurement than fundamental frequency. I guess I'll go back. So if you want to convert fundamental frequency to pitch, there are several ways. So for those who know music, have you heard of the term semitone? It's just it's the semi. 这是半音的意思吗？半音 Yeah. So music instruments are designed for human beings to hear, I guess. Now, maybe you play for your cats or your dog, but mostly it's for human. So it's adjusted to human hearing. So if you want to convert a fundamental frequency to a pitch, there is a male scale, which I can give you the formula, but you don't need to know. You just input your fundamental frequency, and then it will come out as a male scale. And the male scale, this is so for the y-axis is the male scale, and then the x-axis is the hertz scale. So you can see that you can think of this as your sensitivity to that frequency change. 把 y 轴当作你的 sensitivity. So you are more sensitive to a 1000 hertz difference here compared to a 1000 difference here. 你看那个斜率有没有？你在比较低频的时候，你对这个1000 hertz, the sensitivity is to the level of 1000. But when it's up here, it's the frequency difference between 9000 to 10,000 is merely it's a much smaller differences. Okay, so that's just giving you another evidence saying that our hearing does something to adjust to the fundamental frequency we hear. 所以 F0 跟 pitch, F0 就是多少 but pitch is a converted scale, a perceptual scale for human being to frequencies. Okay, let me get back and see. So it's a perceptual scale judged by listener to be equal in distance from one another, linear at lower frequency 是线性的 and logarithmic at higher frequency end. 它在低频的时候是比较像直线一样 linear， 可是在高频的时候它就会像那个你们以前学的那个曲线一样，会有logarithmic. Okay? So far we learned about fundamental frequency and then the differences between fundamental frequency and the pitch. Fundamental frequency is interesting. It's particularly interesting for you guys, for all Mandarin speakers, because changing your fundamental frequency change the meaning of a word. Okay, you all know for Mandarin tones, so I'm showing you a picture of Mandarin tones. For your tone 1, we describe it as a high level tone. So your fundamental frequency, or you can call it pitch, is high, starts high and goes level. And then for tone 2, 二声, it starts fairly low and goes up. This is actually from I'm sorry, I should have changed it into a Taiwan Mandarin speaker. This is from a Beijing Mandarin speaker. So his ma is actually quite dramatic. Ma, ma, ma. And then for tone 3, how do you do horse? How do you say horse in Mandarin? Ma. Okay, now feel that. When you're saying, when you always tell foreigners, ma, it's like a go down and go up, right? Now feel your own third tone. Do you actually go up? Most of you shouldn't. That's what happened in Taiwan Mandarin. Our third tone mostly don't, yeah, 不见了, mostly don't have that going up. This is broken because when you are doing the 马, you're doing creaky voice. So Pratt cannot trace that. 马, So my friend from Beijing will actually say 马. Okay, so fundamental frequency is important for tone languages because you like in Thai, you also have tone. You need to sing every single syllable. Do you realize? One time when I was in America, I was walking with a friend from Beijing, and then we were talking, and my American advisor came by and say, "You sing every single syllable. Do you realize it?" Because we were saying, think about it. When you talk, you're actually singing the syllable. I mean, to a foreign ear, 你在说话的时候. Think about it. We're actually singing every single syllable. So fundamental frequency is phonemic. It is a linguistic cue for tone language users. But it's not just tone language. Stress. Now, if I were to ask you to say, okay, memory. How many syllables in memory? 3. If you don't know how to count syllables, sometimes you can use how many times your mouth is open. And the key is that, the reason why it sometimes works is because vowels are produced with the mouth open, relatively speaking. So if your mouth open 3 times, it probably means that you have 3 vowels. Probably means you have 3 syllables. Now, memory. Which syllable is stressed? Me. Now you're sort of a beginner phonetician. Can you tell me the differences between these 3 syllables? Are they the same height? Do they have the same pitch? Do they have the same duration? Let's focus on pitch so far. The stressed one usually have what? Higher pitch. You do memory. Now try making it memorial. Where is the stress? More. Now compare memory and memorial. You're shifting your stress, and you're also making the stressed one higher and actually louder and longer. Compare memory and memorial. You should go home and record yourself saying these 2 words in Pratt, and then you can actually measure your pitch, your fundamental frequency, and your duration, even intensity, using Pratt. I'll show you how to do that today. So actually, page 22. Okay, let's go over the part about stress. I just want to show you some examples. Paragraph 2 under supra-segmentals. Variations. You find it? Variations in stress are used in English to distinguish between a noun and a verb. So it is this I guess you guys are not familiar with. Can you read the second line for that variation paragraph? In most cases, you can read along. In most cases, if you have this kind of noun and verb pair, for nouns, the stress is usually on the first syllable. And for verb, it's usually on the second syllable. Try object. Object as a noun. Object. If you shift the stress to the second syllable, I object. Sometimes some people mix it. It's the same thing for record. Record as a record. And I want to record you. So this is just some example showing that for stressed a syllable, you also use fundamental frequency, but not just fundamental frequency. You use duration and intensity as well. Now pitch accento. I have to say it in a Japanese way. Pitch accento. So pitch accent is a try. Okay, I'll give you an example. Hashi. What's hashi? And what's hashi? 桥吧，桥吧 bridge, I think. So we have two syllables here. We have a HA and SI. Now if you put the kind of, you can think of it as a stress. If you put the emphasis on hashi, that's 筷子, hashi, 桥. And same thing for hana. Hana 是 hana 是花吧，然后 hana 是鼻子。So you see, changing the pitch, it's pitch accent. It works differently from stress. That's kind of that's a feature of Japanese. 他们有 pitch accent. 然后英文啊、法语啊这些语言有 stress. And Mandarin, Cantonese, Thai, Vietnamese has tone. They all use fundamental frequency. So you need to learn about fundamental frequency. Now, the last thing is intonation. Page 23, the pitch pattern in a sentence is known as the intonation. And I'm sure that starting from when you're a kid, when you're starting to learn English, your teachers must have bugged you, nagged you about your intonation. Intonation. So using prod, you can actually trace your intonation. And you can use the sentence Peter gave in the textbook. Now, there are several examples. Let's try toward the end of this paragraph. There's in English. Okay? You find it? In English, it's even possible to change the meaning of a sentence, such as that's a cat, from a statement to a question without altering the order of the words. Usually, if you want to make it a question, you say, is that a cat, right? But how do you use intonation to make that same sentence into a question?
That's a cat.
That's a cat? Yes. So you're doing, okay, when you're saying that's a cat, now, do you think all the consonants and the vowels in that's a cat and that's a cat, do you think anything of that consonant and vowels had been changed? That's a cat, and that's a cat. You say exactly the same consonants and the vowel and the exact same order of the consonants and vowels. 你没有再改任何的 consonant and vowels. But you're doing is you're manipulating something beyond, above consonants and vowels. That's why we call intonation as part of the supra-segmental. Just think of it as an umbrella. It covers consonants and vowels. So you're changing the intonation, and that intonation, you can't really pinpoint it to a certain consonant or a vowel. It's across the entire syllable, sometimes the entire word and the entire sentence. Okay? So we call them supra-segmental features. So supra-segmental features are phonetic features such as stress, length, tone, and intonation, which are not properties of single consonants or vowels. Okay? So now here's a new term. When we talk about segments, now this is the time you can put on your phonetic hat and then phonetician hat and be very cool when your friends make mistake of certain words. So maybe the person is saying, remember the 爱信 example we were doing? Yeah, you can say, I think you have two mistakes there. You have a segmental error and a supra-segmental error. And then your friend would go, what? And then you go, so in 爱信, remember last time we talked about 感谢你的爱信. In 信, what's the segmental error the person made? 他把alveolar nasal, he substitute the alveolar nasal to velar nasal. Okay? And then in terms of supra-segmental level error, yeah, he was supposed to say tone 1, instead he used tone 4. Now you know there are segments, there are supra-segmentals. And then now you can comment on issues relevant to segments and supra-segmentals. Supra-segmentals, in most cases, are not phonemic. In most languages in the world, you can change your fundamental frequency or the supra-segmental features of the language. It doesn't really change much of the information. But I found it, but what's interesting is if you listen to Ricky Martin, so when he sings, you don't really feel he has an accent in speaking English. But when he speaks, you can sense the accent more or less, right? So that's very interesting. This means that your supra-segmental actually affect your accent a lot. Most of you might be paying attention to how do I pronounce the th or how do I pronounce the or u when you're learning a certain language. But what you're not aware of is, aside from the segments, you should pay attention to the global supra-segmental features. It might reduce your accent. Phonetics. Now let's turn to page 202. Page 202, 202页. This is slightly abstract, so if you don't quite understand, just try. Page 202, last paragraph. We are introducing a new term. It's called harmonics. And harmonics are the things that's in harmony with your fundamental frequency. So it's very abstract. Just take my word for it. When your vocal fold is vibrating, when it actually creates multiple harmonics, which is what's the exact wording? Whole number multiples of your fundamental frequency. So if your fundamental frequency is 100, the whole number multiples would be 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. So when your vocal fold is vibrating, it's not vibrating a pure tone. It's vibrating with harmonics that come along with your fundamental frequency. Remember I was telling you that human voice is not a pure tone, it's a complex tone. And then just try to think that when the source, when your vocal fold is vibrating, it's creating this many different frequencies. You have the lowest 100 hertz, and you also have the 200, 300, 400, and 500. Okay, just take my word for it for now. We're going to show you another new word that's called overtones. So harmonics are the multiple, it's the exact wording again, the whole number multiple of your fundamental frequency. They are all called harmonics, including the fundamental frequency itself. So fundamental frequency is fundamental frequency 的1倍就是 fundamental frequency 嘛, right? So the definition of harmonic is whenever it's the whole number multiple of your fundamental frequency, it's called harmonic. All these blue lines are harmonics. Okay? Now, the first harmonic is your fundamental frequency, right? The first one. And then the rest, the second harmonic, third, and the fourth, these are harmonics of fundamental frequency. And we need to introduce you another term. It's called overtones. So do you notice that it doesn't include the fundamental frequency? 有没有这个蓝的这个是从 fundamental frequency 的右边开始的 Okay, that's called overtones. These two terms are a little bit confusing. Just think of harmonic as very fair. Even the fundamental frequency is a harmonic. But when we say overtones, it's all the harmonics above your fundamental frequency. Okay, you just have to know this to help us in the future. Okay, so I think this is pretty much we need to say about fundamental frequency. We're moving on to what's happening after your sound wave leaving your larynx. We're talking about inside your mouth. When we talk about fundamental frequency, it's all the things happening in your larynx. Your vocal folds are vibrating, and we're talking about how fast it vibrates that create your fundamental frequency. Now, imagine all these babies. They travel out of your larynx into your oral cavity, harmonics and overtones. And what happened is these harmonics, when they're passing your oral cavity, because of the way you put your tongue, you're actually in some way you're shaping your oral cavity into different air tube. Now, when you're saying a sound, a like in red, a. Think about now. Just try to imagine there is an air tube from your larynx to your mouth. Then, when you're saying the a sound, you sort of raise the front of your tongue to separate the tube. 有没有？本来是一条长长的管子， and then you raise your tongue, and you're sort of separating the long tube into two or sometimes even three, depends on whether your other parts of your mouth is doing something. So just try to imagine there are different air tubes that would resonate different harmonics. Okay, I'll show you exactly how that's done. Cao, toe. But the mechanism behind that is because those glasses are very clean, of course, first of all, and they're thin. So did you notice they actually have to use some water to touch the surrounding? And the height of the water is different. Now, do you want to guess if the height of the water, so these four glasses, which one? I think they're identical, yes. Which one do you think will produce the highest pitch? Okay, these two glasses has different water volume and different air volume. 它们里头的 air 也是不一样。Is it going lower or is it going higher? Lower. Like I said, the differences of these glasses, there are different air body and then different water body. So the reason why I'm showing this video to you is imagine all the baby harmonics traveling out of your larynx and into your oral cavity, and there are different tubes formed by your tongue and your lip and your palate. So those air tubes would resonate with some harmonic. 有一些 harmonic 就会 that's the harmonic I like. The air tube would actually resonate that harmonic and make it sound louder. What happens is when they travel out of your larynx, they're like this. Higher frequency usually have lower intensity, lower volume. But when they pass the oral cavity, some of them are favored. 有一些 frequency 就会特别被你的 air tube 喜欢，然后他们就会特别大声。And so the air tube formed by your tongue height and your tongue position in terms of front or back would affect the way the voice come out. Okay, 就是那个the way you shape your mouth would affect the way the sounds produced. That's the source and filter theory you guys are familiar with. Remember, we talk about the source is here, you have all the harmonic coming out of here, and then because of the way you shape your air tube, they resonate they amplify some of the harmonics and form different vowels. Vowels are mostly produced this way. For consonants, sometimes you're stopping the air, it's not even coming out, remember? So when we talk about vowels, this is what happened. It will be more clear when you go home and read it. So we're introducing resonant frequency. It's a frequency, it's a natural frequency at which things vibrate. So I'm telling you that when you're restructuring your mouth, you're creating air tubes of different length and volume. So each tube would have different frequency that would resonate, 会共振的 frequency. So each system has a tendency to oscillate at larger amplitude at some frequency than others. So some frequency are favored by the E tube. It thus create the acoustic features for the vowel E, and some harmonic are favored by A, it will amplify the frequency for A. I'll show you, first of all, I'll show you a video of what it means that to resonate with a sound wave. Have you seen in the movies some lady singers will be singing really high pitch, and the glasses actually are shattered? I'm going to show you how this professor did it, and he's just so fun. I wish I could lecture like him. It's from Caltech, California Technology Institute. It's quite famous. Okay, so this is just telling you everything has a resonant frequency. Sometimes you can input 50 dB and then it will explode because it resonates, and sometimes the amplitude would exceed the original input. And sometimes you can also I like to think of as a personal level. Do you feel sometimes you can echo what someone's thinking or saying? Good friends, they say something and you're like, oh, I agree with you. It's like you're resonant with that person. That's why sometimes we say, oh, I echo your feeling. That's what it's about, okay? So just take my word for it. The air tube inside your mouth is resonating to certain frequency. And for different vowels, different kind of air tubes are formed. Naturally, different frequencies are resonated. People have resonant. I'm talking about the air tube inside your mouth even has resonant frequency. Our body probably has. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Imagine if you're an alien, if you want to destroy Earth, all you have to do is emit a resonant frequency. Human being will resonate too. But do you think it's possible? I mean, if human has resonant frequency, would my resonant frequency be the same as Fanny's? Probably not, because I'm much bigger. Yeah, you're thinner. And also, human body is not homogeneous. You see, we have we have random sac inside our body. Your stomach has air, and then so I bet it would be really difficult to find the resonant frequency of human body. But for beakers, you see it's very homogeneous. It's just glass, right? And then for air, so what I'm thinking is for simpler objects, it's easier to find their resonant frequency. But for a complex organism like us, it will be much harder. But that's good thinking. Don't let the aliens know. Okay. So formants. So now we're introducing another new term that you have to know for vowels. Just try to take my word for it. Just imagine that when you're shaping your tongue to a different height and different position, imagine there are actually 2 or more harp glass inside your mouth resonating to a certain frequency. So if you change the shape, the harp glasses need to be changed because depends on the volume of the air tube. It resonates to different kind of harp glass. So just try to think. If you don't get all the physics I've been talking about, at least think about every time when you pronounce a vowel, there are like 2 harp glasses playing inside your mouth simultaneously. Okay? Actually, we usually use 3 to describe, but the first 2 is good enough for you to distinguish different vowels. Let me show you how it's inside your textbook. Can you find a picture that differentiates English vowels? It's on page 186. Figure 8.3. So if you go home and pronounce the English E, I, E, A, O, U, you'll find that if you look at their, so what's this? What's the name of this kind of figures? Yes, there are spectrograms. And on spectrograms, if you want to point, the vowels always have 3 earthworm-looking, dark, horizontal thingy to represent the vowels. 它就是会有那个蚯蚓的那个横向的这个。So if you look at E, the author actually used arrows to point out the most 3 distinct earthworms for you. The first one is around, what do you say, 300 hertz. And then the second arrow is around 2,200 or so. That's when you pronounce E. So just imagine when you pronounce E, 2 harp glasses inside your mouth go simultaneously. And simultaneously, 它们是一起，就像你们弹钢琴的时候，哆咪嗦，it's simultaneously. Oh yeah, just think when you're pronouncing an E, you're pressing 3 keys at the same time. So for vowels, they're like chords. 和弦是 chords 嘛哈 They're like chords. For each vowel, you play 2 or 3 keys to make that vowel using your oral cavity. So yeah, when you talk, it's like you're singing, you're playing a music. Okay, so you can see that for different vowels, the composition of their formant, 它们 formant 的相对位置还有高度都不一样。That's why you have different vowels. You are not aware of it, but every time you see E and A, magical things happen inside your mouth, and that sound wave will transmit to a listener's ear, and because that person has prior knowledge about what the E sound is, what the A sound is, at least you need to know that for different vowels, they have different formant and different formant compositions. So, this is actually relevant to your coming assignment. You have an assignment that's called vowel chart. I don't think it's due today, so don't panic just yet. So I want you, okay, let me get back to the harp glass one more time. So remember I was talking about, you can think there are 2 harp glasses inside your mouth. And the first harp glass is actually relevant to how wide your mouth is open. Okay, if you have a much wider opening, you will need a different harp glass because it echoes to a different frequency. And then the other harp glass is in charge of the position of your tongue, whether it's front or back. Now, does that ring a bell? I've been asking you, when you were in intro linguistic, did I ask you to memorize the vowel chart? Yeah, and this is how the vowel chart looks like. We used to think of them as, the height of the tongue is high, so this one is a high vowel and this is a low vowel. But in fact, it's a better correspondence to the acoustic feature of these vowels. 就是说，他们在画这个 vowel chart 的时候呢，其实它是比较针对它的 acoustic 的特色去画的。那个 height， but because the height correlate to the acoustic cue, remember? Because of the height, because of the positioning of your tongue, you're forming different resonance cavity to resonate different vowels. So they're related. In the second paragraph, figure 8.3 is a set of spectrogram of an American English speaker saying the word heed, hid, head, had, hard, hard, hood. Actually, any of you who does not have the distinction between HOD and HAWED, I actually forgot what HOD means. Okay, but can you hear my distinction between these 2 words? HOD on the left-hand side will be hard. And then HAWED is hard. Okay? In America, in some dialect, these 2 vowels are not distinct. They just say hard for both words. But in Taiwan, you know the past tense for catch is caught. It's the mirror image of that C. So the way to draw the vowel chart is you draw your first formant measurement here, and then the second formant measurement here. So for an E vowel, it's probably 250 F1 and then 2,300 F2. With that coordination, you can draw the vowel chart. 就是下一个 assignment 你们就会要说这些 vowel， 然后你就要量你的那个 harp one harp glass harp glass harp 1 glass harp 2 and then do your vowel chart. Yeah, there are some people who claim that everybody has your own voice print. 声纹分析有没有？ So they could have a recording and they want to know if you are the person who pronounced that sentence. Okay? Peter actually spent some, he mentioned this in the last part of the book. Can you find it for me? What page? 20. Can you go toward the end of chapter 8? Can you help me after 205? Can you help me find the where he might have mentioned voice print? Third paragraph. Oh, yeah. We'll conclude second or yeah, it's and we will conclude this section with a few comments on speaker identification in legal proceedings. Spectrogram of a person's voice are sometimes called voice prints, and they are said to be as individual as fingerprints. What do you think? Don't read. Let's guess. Do you think everybody's voice has some feature that's unique as your fingerprint? You think? Can you imitate other people's voice? Yes. When you're acting, you can pretend you're old. You can change your voice dramatically, right? So Peter's stand is like this. Because there's no way you can. I mean, it's very difficult to change your fingerprint. But your voice is easy to alter. You see, if I talk like this, you still think that's UN? No way. You see, so the idea of voice print isn't. I mean, it's a great idea, but it's not as plausible as fingerprint. So. But in the department I was talking about, the phonetic forensic department, they're more concerned with, okay, what does your supra-segmental do when you're lying? Do you raise your pitch, or do you lower your pitch, or do you say things with a much louder intensity? Sometimes when you're lying, you're trying to convince the person you're lying to. You tend to be louder, right? So there are a benefit of analyzing the phonetics of human voice. And also, if you are into acting, in America, those actors who can actually switch accent are the most popular one. So how do you switch from American accent to an English accent? First of all, you need to know the vowel differences. Now, if you look at your page, where was that we were looking at the vowels? Okay, page 186 and 187. For figure 8.3, you have the American English vowel. Now on the right-hand side, that's a figure for a British English vowel. Notice any I. Yeah, look at the ah sound as in hot. There are. Yeah, actually if you compare the, okay, in British English, do you notice their ah is very similar to all? Because our perception, human perception of frequency in different ranges are different. So Peter actually very sweetly provided this this PDF file for you guys. So if you're not, the easy way to do your assignment is I'm going to show you how you record your vowels. And then after you do the measurement, just use the Stone Age technique, 石器时代的 technique. And then you can actually go, oh, 500 and 200, that's my something like that. It's actually a very easy assignment. So where do you think, how many vowels in attack? 2, yes. And where do we find vowels in this spectrogram? Worms, yes. Those with worms or those with longer duration, with darker. You see, if I were to ask you, do you think in general, vowels and consonant, which one is louder? Vowels, yes. And we did mention, I think we did, on a spectrogram, the intensity, 强度, is shown by darkness. So the darker the color, the louder it is. Okay, so if you were to guess where the first and the second vowel is, where do you think they are in terms of the alphabets? 你觉得第一个跟第二个 vowel 在哪一个区间里面？第一个 vowel 在哪里？ It's probably A, eh? And then the second vowel? C. The worms are much more distinct in E. You see, in E, you have the first worm here and some worms here. This is not a perfect recording. This is actually the aspiration. The worms are more clear here. Okay, so this is your, what's the first vowel in attack? And then the second vowel is A. And where is the stress? So do you see the te having a much longer duration than Okay, so what you have to do is take a ruler and then you mark your vowels and label them. So this is a and then it's a. Now let's say what's the rest? Attack. So between these two vowels there is a t. Where do you think we should mark the t? We have BC, we have C. Any other answers? If you pick BC and then the vowel is right here, what's D? It is part of the stop. You see, there's a T in between the first and the second vowel, right? So anything inside between that is your consonant. So it's a T, so this is your closure. You block the air. And then I mark the burst because when you're doing T, there's actually a very strong burst coming out. And then you have the aspiration. So the entire B, C, and D. Actually, you probably don't have to mark the C. It's okay. Just imagine it's just B and D. And the B is the closure. D is the release and the aspiration. So they all count as part of the stop. Okay? And then you have the A, and then for the K. So in that sense, if I were to ask you to mark K, which segments would you include? Just G, F, and G. F, again, is your closure, and this sharp burst is your release. So when you're reading a spectrogram, whenever you see a sort of blank, it's not necessarily completely blank because it might be recording some background noise. But if it's fairly weak here, and then with a sharp burst, I can bet you that's probably a stop. Okay, using this technique, why don't you start from it left a greasy stand, start marking the vowels, and then try to guess where the consonants starts. Yeah, look for that sharp release. 有一个长条直线的那个，一定是 stop 被 release 的时候。So start with the vowel, so it'll be very easy, and then you move on to stops because they're easy to spot. Stops are easy to spot. That's good. Okay, guys, just a reminder. For vowels or voiced segments, for vowels you can look for the earthworms, but you can also see from the vertical line. So every vertical line represents one vocal fold vibration period. 所以你如果看到那个直直纵条的那个很多的 that's probably a vowel or a nasal or a approximant. We'll talk about the differences of these later. Just those are the voiced sounds, more louder sounds that your vocal fold has to vibrate. Try this. When you're saying it left, can you feel that if your T is released? It left. Can you say the sentence without lowering your tongue tip for the T? You see, originally you say it, right? You release the stop. But when there is a L sound, which is also an alveolar sound, you get lazy. You do it, le. That's why you don't have that aspiration for the T sound. So immediately after your T, this part, okay, can you sort of see this spectrogram has two components in it? This one is slightly lighter with the edge, and this one is much darker. 可以看得出来吗? So the first part is your L. This is an idea I need to tell you about. Remember, if I were to ask you, what's the manner of articulation for L? What's the manner of articulation for L? L. Is it a stop? Is it a fricative? It's a, what's a L? It's an approximant. What's the definition for an approximant? Is your articulators approach each other, but not constricting the air. 你再想一想 approximant 为什么叫 approximant? Because it's not blocking the air or creating tunnels. So that should make you, that should point out that, so for all the approximants, they should look very similar to vowels on spectrograms. You see, for vowels, you're also sort of moving your tongue but not blocking the air. And you do the same thing for approximants. So these are all the approximants that you have learned so far. You have the L and R. Peter was being lazy. This should be an upside down R. He mentioned in the book that in this book, sometimes the R is used to replace the English R. So this really should be, you can just go ahead and change it. This should be the upside down, the rose R, the R. So you have the L here, the R here, and then the W here, and then the Ya here. Okay, look at this 4 spectrogram. Which approximant do you think look like vowels the most? 这4个 consonant, 这4个 approximants. If you look at their spectrogram, Y and Y and L. Do you see how Y looks so much like a vowel? 它真的有好几个 harp glass harp. And W is the same thing. And do you remember from high school or junior high school, what do your English teachers call W and Y? They're kind of like bats. 像蝙蝠一样. Are bats birds? No, they're not birds, but they fly, right? And most of the mammals probably won't think bat is part of their gang. Yeah? So bat is kind of in between. W and Ya are the same. They are not quite like consonants. They are not exactly like vowels, but they're very vowel-like. That's why we call them semi-vowels. 半母音记得吗? That's why we call them semi-vowels, because they sound like vowels. Okay? So for W and Ya, why do I talk about, we were talking about L sound. L and R are the same. They are, when you pronounce L and R, you're not blocking the air. So they have stronger formants than regular consonants. Okay? So the reason why we talk about that is because we're doing left. Okay, so we have the L here. And then moving on to E, Le. Okay, Now, how do you cut? What do you think this noise is? Now, this is the T. Do you all agree? This boundary here is when you release the T for your left. This is the part we want to talk about the noise of fricatives. So for fricatives, something like this. If you look at this part and this part, they are like, you see sometimes when it doesn't happen now, but in the old days, sometimes when your TV doesn't have any signals, it will create kind of noise. And fricatives are like that. They don't have worms. They just have random noises, and you don't see vertical lines. For the voiceless one, you don't see the periodic movement of your vocal folds. So this is the F part, followed by the T part. Okay? Another thing, when you do left do you actually do left or you do left? So this closure and there is a release merging into the T part. So this whole thing is your T and schwa. If you just want to mark the T segment itself, it's probably here. Can you see why I put the right boundary here? 你们大家看一下我的这个 right boundary. Okay, so it's very easy doing spectrogram reading. All you have to do is, you can't be color blind. You can still do it because it's just black and white. You know, you just look at the shade of the darkness. Okay, left gree. So this part is your g. This is the release of your g. Remember, when we talk about the R sound, it's actually, it will merge with your vowel because they're very alike. So sometimes it's not easy for you to trim approximant from vowels. Let me just say it again. On spectrograms, if you have a stop and a vowel, it's very easy. You look for the burst, you look for the aspiration and the vowel. Easy. And for fricatives, you're looking for a static noise, random noises, and the vowel, easy. But for approximants, it's extremely difficult because they look like vowels. They sound like vowels. And among approximants, why don't I ask you, do you think liquids, what are liquids? L and R, they're liquids, right? And we also have glides, wa and ya. Okay. Liquids and glide, which one would be much more difficult to slice from the vowel? We have glide, we have liquid. It's the glide. The wa and e, they're just very vowel-like. So for this, we'll just say for now this is the re part, and then s is this part. You see, this part is your vowel. Gre, s. I'm just going to use my finger now. The s part. And then this is the e. Greasy. And you see there's a s again. You see greasy, s. T. You have your closure here. You release it here. And then this is your tiny, tiny aspiration. So when you say stand, can you feel that the T isn't as aspirated as tan? Stand and tan. Which one has a longer aspiration? Stand and tan. Not dang. Stand. Which one has longer aspiration? You probably can't feel it now just yet. You can, but I mean, after you're trained, you should be able to tan. Okay, try. You can use your hand and try it because when you're saying tan, there's a much stronger, bigger puff of air coming out of your mouth. So that creates a longer duration on your spectrogram. Okay? But when you're saying stand, it sounds like S-D-E-I-N, right? Stand. So it has a much shorter aspiration. That's why this part is so short. Okay? So this is your T, unaspirated T. You guys do realize when you're saying this T after a S in American English, you most likely say it as a voiceless, unaspirated stop. Now try S-K-Y. Okay, compare that to K-I-T-E. Okay, they are both spelled with a K, right? Can you feel these two Ks are different? When you're saying S-K-Y, are you saying sky? You do sky. And the differences between these two Ks is in kite, the K is aspirated with long leg. And in sky, you're not doing sky. You're doing sky. It's a voiceless, unaspirated K. Is that clear? Okay? So, and then the diphthong, N. So, I'm actually going to also talk about diphthongs. Here, I'll show you the text later, but for diphthongs, what's the definition of, how do you call diphthong in Chinese, in Mandarin? A diphthong is a vowel in which there is a change in quality during a single syllable. So the vowel, what's the vowel in mic? I. Okay. Now I. Do you feel your mouth is actually changing shape when you're saying the I sound? Okay. When a vowel has a change in quality and it's in the same syllable, we call it a diphthong. And the pronunciation is diphthongs. Now do it. Diphthong. So if you go back to the stand part, you can feel that the earth form is actually kind of changing shape, right? It's changing the direction. And then the nasal is the weak. So the nasal is the last part, the dark lower end of it. But of course, when you're doing the stand in English, you don't do stay. You nasalize the vowel. So your EI is being contaminated with a little of a nasal quality. Okay, stand. So I want to comment more on the diphthongs. Here's a secret. You sort of know the secret, but you are not aware of the phonetic grounding of it. If I were to tell you I can produce a syllable with triphthongs. Okay, if you do a morphological analysis to the word diphthong, DI means two, right? Now, how do you pronounce a triphthongs? I mean, what's a triphthong? It means that it should have three very vowel-liking segments, right? Can any of you do a triphthong? Think about the Mandarin yao. How many segments are there in yao? Yao. Yeah. So there are three of them. So it's actually quite unique having diphthongs, having triphthongs. But let me ask you, if you really analyze these diphthongs and triphthongs, so tell me, what are the two diphthongs you know? Maybe there are more. Name me some diphthongs in English, American English that you know. 你们知道英语里头有哪些双母？那叫双母音吗？A 呀 ，I 呀 ，ow 啊 ，o oi, okay, boy, oi, okay, oi. Have you noticed the the peripheral ones. It doesn't matter whether it's a diphthong or a triphthong. The one that's at the edge of that unit. 你们仔细分析一下这些 peripheral 的 segment. They're mostly glides. Think about it. Think about it. Now review all the diphthongs you just told me. And there is a glide in it. I can bet you. A. Is there a glide in A? As in gate? Is there a glide in gate? Gate. My pronunciation is American English. So for the vowel in gate, I need to have that glide. Gate. Okay? There's a glide there, right? Name me another diphthong in English. How about mic? For that I, with the glide, right? Now in cow, ow. Yeah, some might think that the u sound. So if I ask you to transcribe the word cow, you might do K, cow, K-A-U, right? But you can also do K-A-W, W, right? So these glides, they can merge with the vowels seamlessly. 无缝接轨. The glides they glide into your vowels. So all the diphthongs and triphthongs, most of them in the language in the world are glides because they can glide to the vowels. Okay? So whenever you see it looks like it's one unit on your spectrogram, but it's changing the quality, it's probably a diphthong. And we will usually give you the transcription of it, so it will be easy for you to transcribe them. In Japanese, sometimes they have problems saying distinguishing R and L. And I'm going to show you a video from the movie Lost in Translation. I want you to pay attention what the stripper was saying. So there's this American guy who was an actor, and he went to Japan to do a commercial. And he had a stripper in his hotel room, and this is the scene from the hotel room. Lost in Translation. This is the actor, and his voice was...
Hey, this is my stocking.
Hey, lift them, what?
Lift them, like this. Lift them.
Rip them?
This.
You want me to rip your stocking?
Yes, this, like this.
Rip your stocking?
Yes.
I want you to rip your stocking. Okay. I'm going to rip your stocking.
Yeah.
And you tell Mr. Kazoo, you know, we had a blast.
Okay. So the lady cannot distinguish from the R and L, which is phonemic. This contrast is phonemic in English. You change the segment, that's a completely different meaning. And in the same movie, they were singing. One time they were in this restaurant in Japan, and the owner tried to sing this Christmas carol to Murphy, and then they were saying, so na 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 ra 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 ra. It should be la 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 la. Yeah. So it just so happened R and L are not phonemic in Japanese and Korean. So when they are learning another language, that these two sounds are contrastive, they have problems. And we are the same thing. Now I'm going to ask you, is there two sounds? Are there sounds in English that you just have problem with just because in Mandarin there's only one sound that's sound similar to those two sounds? The reason why they cannot tell these two sounds is because they're actually acoustically very similar. If you look at the spectrogram of R and L, they are similar. No wonder they cannot tell the difference. And actually, for kids, they sometimes have problem distinguishing W and R and L. And this guy, do you know him? It's a cartoon character. Elmo Fudd, I think. Amler thud. And he has a catch line. His line is be very quiet. Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting a rabbit. But he can never do the W or the R right. He has a very distinct way of saying it. I want you to, I'm sorry I couldn't make it louder. Try to pay attention to us and see how he's doing it. Oh, this is loud. Too loud. Did you actually get to hear? Be very. Okay, the approximant in very is be very quiet. I'm hunting rabbit. Yeah, so for many children, toddler, they have difficulty pronouncing R and L. They just replace everything with W. Rabbit. That's just, so you see these approximants, they are a mess. Kids sometimes cannot distinguish them. Yeah, it's quite distinct, so it's saved. But for W and R and L, sometimes kids have problem distinguishing them. This is from your textbook, page 197. I want to show this to you because you don't have to remember every single one of them for the purpose of this class. But these are the things that I think you should remember. So you can mark them. While you're marking them, you need to remember. So these are the acoustic correlates. These are the things that you will see on your spectrogram. If it's a voiced, if the segment is voiced, like stops and approximants, that you will have vertical striations. Remember I was telling you those vertical lines indicating the vibration of the vocal folds. And today we didn't get to introduce retroflex. I'll do that next time. But for stops, you would definitely see a gap in pattern followed by burst of noise for voiceless stops or sharp beginning of a Formant structure for a voiced stop. And fricatives will have random noise patterns, especially in higher frequency regions. Okay, I should show you the frequency pictures. And then sometimes you will see nasals. Nasals have formant structures similar to that of vowels, but with nasal formants at about 3,250. So for nasals, I'll introduce the nasals next time again. So for nasals, when you're pronouncing the nasal, most of the air came out from which channel? Your mouth or your nose? When you're pronouncing the nasal sounds. 你在发 nasal 的声音的时候，大部分的空气是从嘴巴出来，从鼻子出来。And it's thus lower. It's not as loud. Compare saying a ah sound and a sound. Ah, They're not as loud. So for nasals, if you want to see whether it's a nasal, you can first of all check whether it's weaker in terms of the formants, and if the formants are sort of in this region. I won't ask you to remember these numbers, but you just need to know for nasal sounds like the stand. So these are the things you need to remember. I'll go over them again next time. Let me go through the slides I have. We talk about semi-vowels. Nasals we'll mention again next time. These are the voiceless fricatives you have in English. And if you want to see how they look different on spectrograms, the most distinct one is between s and sh. Now, if I do, now this is what you have to hear me. If I do s, and do sh, which one do you feel that is higher in frequency? Right? So you see the s part, this is the frequency. You see it's darker in a higher frequency region. And then for the sh, it's kind of lower. So that's how your ears can tell the difference between s and sh. It's by where the strongest energy is, whether it's in a higher region or a lower region. And can you imagine that you're doing it without thinking? You can process whether I'm saying she or she. I mean, you can tell, right? If I'm I'm saying she or she, right? You can tell, right? Okay. But imagine if you have to create a machine that can tell the difference of these two. It takes so much programming. 你要训练一个机器人能够听得懂 s 跟 sh， 你要先 program 说 you have to program it to know that the exact frequency region of the s sound and frequency region of the sh sound and that. So you must appreciate our perceptual system that we can do it without thinking. It's all automatic. Okay? So, and then in terms of f and th, it's much harder. And sometimes you will see their voiced counterparts. The voiced counterpart for s is z, and then zh, and then v, you have the v sound and the sound. Remember we mentioned the voice bar. The difference between them and their voicing counterpart is they have that darker region voice bar. Their fundamental frequency, you're vibrating your vocal fold when you're saying, right? So you will have that voice bar because your vocal folds are vibrating.